So why is storytelling important? Data alone doesn't drive our decisions, stories do. I mean, you can take it all the way back to, fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen. All those things are stories that we pass through generations, things that are important, things that we should be teaching the next generation, the next things. So stories and storytelling is incredibly important if we're going to make any sort of difference with all that work we're doing in the data. It bridges the gap between analysis and action for non-finance stakeholders. And I think the big thing for most of us is that last part, is the non-finance stakeholders. As accountants, one of the biggest issues we have is that we can sound like accountants, and that is not fun. So how do we communicate numbers or get people to listen to us who aren't accountants and actually do something with the work we're trying to do? Trust and credibility, which is incredibly important, especially when it comes to presenting numbers. I was with a guy that I sit on a couple of boards with yesterday, and we're having a beer and we're having a chat about this, and he got a board deck the other day, and he just noticed one thing that was wrong in the numbers, and based on that, he didn't trust anything he read from that point onwards. And we were talking about it, and it's true. I mean, if you just have one thing that doesn't look right or to smell right, if I have someone in my team present something to me, and I look at it and I don't think it's right, or I think there's something wrong there, I don't trust anything in that document. And I want to go away and then redo it myself because I don't trust what I've been delivered. So it's just so important how we communicate what we're doing to make sure we have that trust and credibility. Engage more diverse audiences, alignment and influence. And I think the big one is, I think sometimes we forget that the decisions that are going to be made on the work that we are presenting have real world impacts. It could be people losing jobs. It could be, shutting down a part of a site. It could be anything. So it's so important. We have a responsibility almost to be able to communicate our work really, really clearly to the people that need to make changes and differences. So what did I learn in acting school? Lots of random things, but three of the main things that we talked a lot about, and it all revolves around how we communicate. So one of them, they always say, and no one believes this, but the world revolves around sex, death, and taxes. It only matters if you make it matter, which is a hard one to get your head around. And then lesson 3 was everybody wants something. We all have an objective, and this is the important one. And essentially, every single time that we talk to someone, we breathe, we do anything, we want something. Because why are we talking? Down to the person who's serving us lunch, to driving the taxi, to your partner. Anytime we talk, there is an objective. We are doing it for a reason. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking. And the important thing with communication, and the big thing I'm going to talk a lot about today, is figuring out what we want and figuring out what they want. So if I'm displaying something like a set of numbers or something like that, why am I doing that? What do I want you to do? Do I want you to change something? Do I want you to, so what do you want to see as well? How do you communicate, and how are we going to get that together? So, secret to good communication, know, as I just said there, know what you want, know what they want, prepare, practice, and trust in yourself. But the big thing is, what's my objective? So, I studied lots of different types of acting. One of them is called the Laban method. So on this, essentially, if we're doing a scene and we're looking at a script, I'll get my script and I'll work out all of these things before I, start rehearsing it. And the big one for my character would be, what's my super objective? So what do I want to achieve overall? So if it's an acting thing, it could be, what my, in the show or all over, what my character wants, but it's not going to be achieved in that scene, but overall. So if it was, I don't know, if I'm trying to raise money, let's say, and putting it in business perspective, and I'm writing a deck, it would be great. So this deck is not going to get me investment, because that's not how it works, but the deck. So that my super objective might be to raise money. Then my objective is what I'm trying to achieve with what I'm doing. So if it's a deck, the objective is actually just to get a meeting, because my deck will hopefully get a meeting. That's the objective of writing the deck. The super objective is I want to raise money, but they're going to obviously want to meet me and chat with me, and there's a whole bunch of steps before after. So yeah, in a scene for the objective, it'll be what am I trying to get from the other character in that scene at that moment. The action of how am I going to achieve it? What am I going to do to get that from you? Am I going to educate you? Am I going to flirt? Am I going to make you angry? So how am I going to get my objective? And then lastly, what we call the through phrase. And the through phrase is one little sentence that you can think in your head, and anytime you feel nervous or anything, you think of your little through phrase and it puts you back on track. And that to us is how I would do it if I was doing a scene. And what I do is when I'm having a meeting, or if I'm talking to somebody, if I'm going into a board meeting, for instance, I will do these in my head and work out, what do I want to achieve in this board meeting? What's my objective? How am I going to do it? So I think about that beforehand, and then I write down a little through phrase on the top of my bit of paper, and anytime I'm feeling a bit self-conscious or nervous or anything, or I'm getting off track or waffling, I think of my through phrase, and it puts me right back into the place. And when you forget about everything, you just do it, you've planned, you practice, you achieve your objective. So this is not just for meetings or thinking or anything like, just for talking to people, but this is also for creating documents as well. Presentations or FP&A analysis, presenting data. If you think about what you want to achieve by presenting that data, the way you present that data, or you graphically demonstrate that data or illustrate it, is going to come through in your work. The other thing to think about, especially with communications, what's their objective? What do they want out of this? Who is it for? Is it for your boss? Is it for a CEO? Is it for a CFO? What type is it for someone in sales? So what things are they looking for? What things is important for them? What do they want? What keeps them up at night? What scares them? What makes them happy? What makes them angry? Thinking about the things in there that they really want to see in that data. What is the stuff that is important that they need to have jumped out at them? What's their department objective? Do they get a bonus if such and such is achieved or not achieved? Having in mind and thinking about all of those different things while creating it will help you make sure you pinpoint the things that they want to look at. And then it's thinking about what can you do for their objectives? How can you help them in the way you're presenting your data? So if I'm presenting, I work a lot in scale-ups, and especially in tech. So a lot of the CEOs I work for are incredibly neurodiverse. They are very tech geeky. They've not been a CEO before, so they're not very good at communicating. They hate conflict. So I know that they also hate reading. So the first thing I would do is make sure the thing that they want to see is the first thing that comes up on that page. And it's not a long waffly email, it's dot points, and I know that I have to do right to the point is this is that, this is that, this is that. Investors, they don't read. Investors hate reading. So if I'm doing an investment deck, it's all pictures, pretty pictures. The guy I was talking to yesterday, we were talking about, I used to do some work for a VR company that made chairs that span around and did all sorts of funky things. And one of the investors made a comment in one of our board meetings, because it was a very hostile board and they were very unhappy with the founder when I came on board. And he made a comment that he wanted to see things on assembly lines and things being made. So in the next deck, all I did was 3 pages of the pictures of this thing getting assembled by people in China, and this is where this gets done. And then suddenly everyone was excited and everything was great, and the problems all went away because he communicated. For him, his objective was to see something being built. It's great. So once I knew that, I was able to achieve that. And then how do they communicate? And that's another thing to keep in the back of your heads as well. So the person you're speaking with, how do they communicate and how do they listen? So that's the next bit. So I got married to a psychiatrist. That was fun. And we just got married. It was probably about a week into being married. And she said, oh, can we do this? Has anyone heard of this book? Anyone? She goes, can we do this love languages book? And I said, what the f***? I've been married 5 bloody minutes and you want to do marriage counseling? And anyway, so she got me to read this book. And while I listened to the audio version, and while listening to it, I thought, God, this works well in business. There's some great crossovers here. So essentially, the book is about we all communicate in different ways, right, as humans. And we all specialize between 1 to 5, these 5 different love languages. And to all of us, some are more important than others, but we're all different, right? So physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gift giving, and acts of service. So a good example was, I would bring my wife flowers, because I was a gift guy, and I'd bring her flowers, and she'd be like, oh, thanks. I'm like, what? I didn't get it. But for her, I used to make the lunches in the morning, and that was acts of service, but that really meant a lot to her. So after we read this, we figured out, oh, hang on, if you're acts of service, I'll do more acts of service now. And she's like, well, your gifts, I'll give you more gifts. So you changed the way we communicated when we figured out which one was more important to each other. So I thought, this is great in business. I used to have a business partner who, he would come all the way from the Isle of Wight to London, and we would walk around the block all day. And I could not figure out why the hell we were doing this. I wanted him to help me with this and that and do this, and all he wanted to do was walk around the block. And then after I read this book, I went, oh, he's a quality time guy. He just wants quality time with me to talk about things. That's the way he communicated, was having that one-to-one time meant more to him than anything else. So I met another guy who was giving me a lecture about a firm physical touch in business. Well, let's not go there, but a firm handshake. But, you know, there is the thing. I have an old staff member, and words of affirmation, picked it in 2 seconds. You said, great job. She just melted. So every time she did something, I went, you did a fantastic job today. That was wonderful. I really enjoyed that. And then I had it on side instantly, and that'll follow up with something else. Gift giving. That same guy who used to walk around the block, he had an assistant, and she literally would do anything for him. And I figured out she was a gift giver, and every year he would buy her something like an iPad, and she just thought he was God. So if you know that the people you're trying to communicate with, let's say if it's a boss or someone like that, and if you know, or CEO, and they're a difficult or prickly pair, but you know how they communicate, you can change the way that you communicate to get better in, so they would listen to what you're trying to do.
To access all of our exclusive talks, why not become a member today? When you join, you'll unlock world-class finance resources, including pre-built financial models, practical templates and frameworks, and over 100 hours of on-demand insights designed to help you stand out in your career. And if you want to join us live, you can also get involved in upcoming events with finance leaders from across the industry. Just head to the link in the description to learn more and join our community. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.